All right, grade 5s and 6s, we're back for the topic of adjectives today. Adjectives are pretty familiar to us and they have an easy definition. That definition is that they describe nouns or pronouns. If you think back to pronouns, pronouns are words that can take the place of a noun, so it makes sense that adjectives would describe both of those things. The word describe we could also replace with the word modify, and I want to tell you that today because when we go to adverbs, we're actually going to use the word modify. And modify just means to change our understanding of. So adjectives help us to understand more specifics about our nouns or pronouns, and in that sense they modify our understanding of them. So let's take a look at different types of adjectives. Adjectives tell us a bunch of different kinds of things. So if we ask ourselves questions, we can find adjectives easily in our work. Adjectives tell us what kind. So if I have a noun like the flower, and I say a pretty flower, it's telling me what kind of flower. If I say which one, something like that flower or this flower tells me which one. And if I say how many, in that sense, we see that numbers are adjectives. Like if I say 3 flowers, then 3 is my adjective. Now the words a and the are also adjectives. And if we think about saying the flower, it's telling me which one, or a flower in that sense might be telling me as well how many. So there are words that come in front of nouns and they help us to understand nouns better. So in English, adjectives always come in front of nouns unless they're linked with the nouns with a linking verb. Remember our state of being verbs. In French, of course, adjectives can actually come before or after, but it's nice that in English, nouns always come before, so they're much easier for us to find. Now, there are a couple different types of adjectives for us also to look at. The first type is proper adjectives. If you think back to proper nouns, proper adjectives are very similar. And in fact, they're similar because they come from a proper noun. And in that case, they always begin with a capital. So if I have a proper noun like Canada, then my proper adjective form is Canadian. So Canada is a place, a noun. It's a specific one beginning with a capital, so it's a proper noun. If I say I was talking to a Canadian student that I met in France, then Canadian is still capitalized, but it's referring to the student. It's describing the student, and it's an adjective, but still referring to a proper noun place, so it still gets its capital. One other type of adjectives are demonstrative adjectives. Demonstrative comes from the root word demonstrate. It's kind of a cool word because it sounds a little bit like monster. Demonstrative adjectives. They're ones that point out a specific person, place, or thing. And there are 4 options: this, that, these, and those. So this and that are both singular. I might say to you, would you prefer to read this book or that book? And both of those things are singular, and you would understand based on context which ones I'm like pointing to, if that's directional or whatever. And these and those are plural. So I would say to you, would you prefer to eat these candies or those candies? Plural forms there. Last topic for adjectives is comparing with adjectives. This is something we do all the time. It's kind of second nature, and we've talked about the terminology already before in our classes, but this is a good review. So let me show you a little chart here. We've got positive, comparative, and superlative. So we've talked about the words comparative and superlative a lot before. We've said comparative means that I'm comparing two and exactly two things or people. If I have superlative, that's 3 or more. So positive is our new term, and positive just means that I'm actually using a word. It doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be a negative one like bad, but it means that I've got a descriptive word here. So we've said before, if I have a word like tall and I'm comparing two people, like he is blank than his brother, then I would have the ER suffix to show that he is taller. If I have the superlative, I add the EST suffix instead. He is the tallest in the class. And you'll notice that I use the word the in front of it. So an ER suffix for comparative and an EST suffix for the superlative. Now, when can I add on those suffixes? The rule is actually based on the number of syllables in my root word. So if I have one syllable, I can add ER or EST. If I have two or more syllables, I can only add the ER or EST suffix if my word ends with an E sound coming from the letter Y. So in the case of lazy, I can say lazier and the laziest. And that using that suffix still works very well there because I get a word that flows nicely here. Difficult is a word that's longer than one syllable, but it doesn't end with the E sound coming from Y. So instead of being able to say difficulter, I need to say more difficult and most difficult. Now there are also a couple of words that change their form when they are comparative or superlative, and good is an example of that, where I don't say more good or gooder, I say better and best. And bad is another example, which becomes worse and worst. There are also words that we say do not have a comparative and superlative form, and perfect is a good example of that, where I would say if something is perfect, it can't be more perfect because perfect is like 100%. It can't be better than that. So it doesn't have a comparative and superlative form. You might think of them as being like an ultimate or supreme word already. So there's your basic rundown of adjective words. As always, if you've got any questions, make sure that you ask. I'm here to help with anything that you've got, and good luck on all of your assignments.